So what you guys see there, again, these are all my demos. You know, so this is some of the stuff I showed you guys yesterday. Oh, it's upside down. There we go. So this is some of the stuff I showed you how to do yesterday. If you guys have that mesh detail, or even like the stamped or cut fabrics, this is what I'm going to show you how to do. So these are just swatches of shadow colors, and I'm going to show you guys how to kind of blend them out. That's one big question a lot of people ask, is how do I blend these out? And then these are some highlight swatches that I was doing just to kind of test out some stuff. And you can see how, you know, on some of these parts there's lighter and darker areas. I'll show you how to do that too. Okay? So I'm going to use this one just because I have more room on it. Okay. So these are the colors that I'm using. It's a little hard to see, but I have a little bit of black, I have the dark violet, and I have the phthalo blue, which is the darker blue over there. And then that's what I'm going to kind of use for my shadow. And then I'm going to use the titanium, or the buff titanium white, which is like an off-white, and I have the yellow, and then I have white. So am I going to use all those? I don't know. I'm not going to know until I start mixing this stuff up, but then I'll do my little demo here. Now again, you guys need to come up with what you feel is the best color for you to use for your shadows. And I think, to be honest with you, it's easier to start your shadows first and then plug in the highlights wherever you need them. So do shadows first and then highlights later. So I'm going to kind of work over here. So make sure you got a bucket of water, a paper towel all the time. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take some of this medium, start with, I think I'll just start with 3 scoops here. And then I'm just going to add, some of my paint's kind of dried here, just literally just a little dollop of the phthalo blue. And then I'm going to also add in a little bit of the violet, not too much. And see what that looks like. Again, it's all one big experiment. You're not going to know what you need until you do it, but I can help you get an idea of maybe where to start. So if you have any questions about what kind of colors you should use for your shadows, just let me know. I'm going to kind of test this out here. See? Oh, I could start there. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'll do it right here. So I'm just going to start so that, you know, again, this is just a mixture of phthalo blue and the violet. I'm just going to kind of paint this on. So again, this would be a good, it's not too dark and it's not too light, but it's just enough that I could see where I'm putting it. You can see I'm starting with the red base here. And that just hopefully can show you guys what that looks like over top of that. So this would be a good kind of shadow color to start with, just to kind of initially find all those shapes, plug those in, and then what I could do is let that dry, and then go back through and make something a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do to make this a little bit darker, zoom in here. To make it a little bit darker, I'll just kind of start a little secondary pile over here. I'm going to add a little bit more of that violet because that violet is the darker one. A little bit of that blue. And maybe just a touch of black, just a little bit, to get something a little bit darker. And then what I can do is, it's easier to do this after it kind of dries just a little bit. Then I can go back over, darken up the areas that I want. And see, and if this is still dry or still wet, a lot of times you just end up wiping off what you just put on. So it is, I think, easier to do this when it's dry. So I'm going to add a little bit more paint in here and try to build this up. And so by even adding more paint into my pile, I'm making the glaze here less transparent, more opaque, which would happen with the shadow. So the darker the shadow gets, the more opaque it's going to appear. and the more it's going to cover. So if you look at some of the really, really, really dark areas of your shoe, you know, you've lost some of the details that you see, so they're hard to see. So I even added a little bit more black there. I'm just going to continue to kind of build that up. And what I do when I'm trying to blend is I just kind of lighten up the pressure on my brush, and I just kind of lift up on it, and I just kind of let it kind of fade out. And I can just keep going. So you can see all these different versions of colors that I've been making here. I'm even using less of the blue because the blue is a little bit lighter, and I'm sticking with the violet and the black. And just continue to build that up. So you can see how I've got all those different layers and all those different kinds of values. And again, I wouldn't stop there, I would keep going. And again, just to blend that out while it's wet, I just kind of lighten up my pressure a little bit, and then that can make it kind of blend out a bit. Okay, so that's how you can do that. If you are using sort of a violet or blue base for your shadow, which I do recommend. It's a really good go-to color to use for your shadows. You probably will need to use some black just to get those darker values in. There's no other way you can do that. So, all right. So for the highlights, I'm going to kind of approach it the same way. So I'm going to start with probably. Let's see here. I'm going to start with about 2 scoops here of the medium. I'm going to add just a little bit of white. I don't want to add too much. Let's see where this gets me. And then I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. Now this is pretty much going to be standard for everybody, and the reason why is the spotlights in this room are really yellow. So and we'll see what this looks like. So again, I think this would be a good start. So this would be like a mixture that I would use to just kind of initially map out where my highlights need to be. And then I would probably let it dry. And then I could go over and find the areas where I really want to add, you know, a mixture with maybe a little less medium in it and a little bit more paint in it so it reads a little bit brighter. And I'll try to do that. Again, it's easier to do it after the paint kind of dries. Just take a little bit of that maybe. Kind of just build that up. You know, and again, when I blend, I just kind of lift off my brush and just very, very lightly kind of try to pull that paint into the other layer. So you can see that. Okay. So again, I could keep going, but I think you guys get the idea. But again, this is not something that you're going to do. You do not want to work with your highlights and shadows until after all your details are painted in, because you can't paint them in once you start laying down your shadows and highlights. Okay, these shadows and highlights fall on top of the entire shoe, not just parts of the shoe. So get all your details done, okay? And then what I would do is start with your shadows, and I would end with your highlights. So I think it'll go quicker that way. So that's how you do that. That's it. You guys can get to work.